This one's one of my favourite, actually, type songs. I think this is actually my favourite. Well, there are two which are my favourite that I've sort of written, and this is one of them. And this one has to do with Worthing, which is a kind of a seaside resort, I suppose you'd call it, on the south coast in Sussex. It's not too far away from Brighton. And my grandfather lived in Worthing for quite a long time. I'm not really sure why. He was a bank manager in Glasgow for quite a long time. And, no, in Greenock, actually. And he moved to Worthing to retire. And when I was very, very small, I used to go and visit him. And I was not, I was a bit of a problem child, I think, when I was small. I can't remember. My grandfather died when I was 13. It's hard to remember too much about him, but I can remember that he used to be very generous, and like staying with my grandfather for 2 weeks in the school holidays usually meant, get lots of sweets and the occasional record, when I was older, and things like that. And I think I kind of treated my grandfather as someone who was overflowing with goodness and sort of like gifts and things like that, because my mother didn't have any money at all, so like my grandfather was the only one in the family who had any bread. So he was kind of like the local gold mine, which is a bit of a shame, really, now looking back at it, because I don't know. I don't know how you think about your parents when you're very small, but I had a rich grandfather and a poor mother, so I think I exploited my grandfather. So like to make up for it, I wrote this song, which is really a kind of a reminiscence. It's a reminiscence on two levels. It comes also from my studies of modern history, about the difference between England now and England immediately before the First World War in the long hot summer of 1914, which was a very good summer. And it's the difference between England then and England now, and it pictures my grandfather as a young man on the beach at Worthing, and later it pictures me on the beach at Worthing where I actually stood in 1968. And the difference between England now and England then. And it's called Manuscript because that's what it's like. It's like holding an old manuscript in your hands. Prince Louis Battenberg is burning, the Admiralty lights down low, silently sifting through papers sealed with a crown. Admiral Lord Fisher is writing to Churchill, calling for more dreadnoughts. The houses in Hackney are all falling down. And my grandmother sits on the beach in the days before the war, smiling a secret smile as she goes to the door. And the young man rides off in his carriage homeward once more, and the sun sets gently on England. Oh, the lights of St. Petersburg come on as usual, although the air seems charged with a strangeness of late, yet there's nothing to touch. And the Tsar in his great winter palace has called for the foreign news. An archduke was shot down in Bosnia, but nothing much. my grandmother sits on the beach in the days before the war. A young girl writing her diary while time seems to pause. Watching the waves as they come one by one to die on the shore. Kissing the beach of England. The day we decided to drive down to Worthing, it rained and rained, giving us only a minute to stand by the sea. And crunching my way through the shingles, it seemed there was little changed, though the jetty was maybe more scarred than I'd known it to be. And Mandy and I stood and stared at the overcast sky, where 10 years ago we had stood, my grandfather and I, and the waves still rushed in as they had the year that he died. And it seemed that my lifetime was shrunken and lost in the tide as it rose and fell on the side of England. Prince Louis Battenberg is burning the Admiralty lights